Welcome to Inside of the Pleasure Studio podcast, where we strip down truths and bear it all as we get real about all things sex, intimacy, and relationships with oneself, another, and the world around us, celebrating the joy of being fully alive and exploring what it means to live a life rich with passion. Every episode, we confront the conventional and break open the cages of censorship as we explore the untamed and often unspoken aspects of intimacy, cutting through the bullshit as we challenge sexual norms and provide you with the unvarnished truth about what it takes to have a fulfilling sex life. So if you're ready to dive into honest and very often provocative conversations that empower and enlighten, you've come to the right place. I am Melissa Louise, your wild host, bringing to you fearless honesty on this unapologetic journey as we talk about sex, love, and life in ways that are smart, fearless, and fun. Because, lover, this is not just about pleasure. It is a fucking revolution.
Hey everyone, so today we're going to speak about pleasure-led business, how females can lead a successful business without burnout. If you are interested, stick around, and today also I brought a great friend of mine, Melissa Lewis, and we're going to speak about our own experience. Myself also went from being an economist to transforming myself into a sacred sexuality coach, and we will share our own stories and how we implement a pleasure-led business. Hi, Melissa.
Hello, beautiful. It's so great to be here.
It's so nice also. So tell me a little bit about your background. What do you do and what does it mean for you, the pleasure-led business?
Oh, how much fun. I mean, I currently live in Mexico, but I'm originally from Australia. And, spent the first 3.5 decades of my life, like just, being in the system, doing everything that I was meant to do, all of those things. But when I had my child, and I knew that for me to have a child, I wasn't going to be placing him in the system, or my child, it happened to be a son. And having him really catapulted me to really stand behind my values. So I left Australia. I raised him through Central and South America. I kept him out of the system. He was wild. And when I say wild, he was like, he was riding a bicycle at 11 months of age, riding skateboards, like really young. But the thing is, children do have this. And, it's really interesting. I know we're talking about female pleasure-led business, but it's also too, when we have a look at how we are told things all the time of how things should be, this is where I was right into pleasure, all of that stuff well before I had my son. But I, really witnessing him, like just allowing him to grow. And my job was to be there and provide and protect, but not to be saying no, not to be controlling. And this child, like before his first birthday, was riding a bike with no trainer wheels, like riding a little bike, riding skateboards. And I'm like, oh my God, we have been conned so much around human nature. And this really leads into feminine-led business, no? So took it, like we got out of Australia, Central South America, and that's, I'm in Mexico now. And so, when I was in Costa Rica, it's really when I started to
I love the way you said it, Costa Rica.
Mexico. Vivo en Mexico. And also living on the land. And so my son and I lived in the jungle. And this is where, I'd stopped using sanitary products and all, like tampons and all of the stuff that got chemicals and everything in, and putting things inside of me for a while. But it really started to land when I lived in the jungle, and we were barefoot, didn't have any chemicals in our water, no chemicals in our food. And I would just free bleed. So I, 3-4 days bleeding, and just bleeding on the ground. And oh my God, the downloads and the quietness. Like I actually just did a video on this on my YouTube channel, this thing around, and it's a really big subject for me, where women need to take their space and their time before they bleed in the first day of the bleed. Like they need to separate from family. They need to be separate from family, or from the stuff that we, whatever we're doing. So yeah, I raised a child through that, and I didn't give a shit. He just ate. I didn't care if he ate bread and butter for 3 days. He's not going to die. There's children starving in the world. So to think that your Western child, like, oh my God, he's only going to eat bread and butter for 3 days. So what? If it gives you a happy mother and a mother that's replenished, it's amazing. But what happens, when we take that silence and we're following our cycle and we're going dark and silent in our dark moon, is that we start communing with our higher self, and this is our power. So that's where things really changed for me, was living in the jungle, coming out of that and maintaining that sovereignty of my experience. I'm a woman. I have a completely different body than a man. And our whole system is the male project. Everything's governed under the sun, and that is a masculine project. That's a men's body's experience. Yes, we need sun, of course, but our body's run by the moon. So that was it. Jungle life in Costa Rica changed everything.
Yeah. And right now that you also a sacred sexuality mentor, right?
Yeah, erotic blueprint, sex, intimacy, relationship, the whole lot. Tantra, Taoist, everything.
Amazing. Yeah. And how did you did that transformation, or how did you started the pleasure-led business? Because
oh my goodness. It got to the point where I felt there was, like, I've always felt like I didn't fit in. And as a woman, I always felt like I had to keep containing myself and trying to be something. And I got a scholarship into this incredible container 10 years ago with Christian Sweeting Morelli, and Alison Armstrong was in it. So many. And the woman, oh my goodness, I feel really bad about forgetting her name. The woman that started, that's, the Om community where you're doing Om meditation. They were all in this container. And I remember just looking at these women and how vibrant and well they were, and strong. Like they would, the word pleasure, even today, when you say pleasure, for me, pleasure brings up this connotation of waftiness and airy-fairy, even though I'm the pleasure advocate. And I got to see, it's like, oh, pleasure. Oh, this is about our health. And so in that container, I really learned, also about our oxytocin, about our dopamine, about cortisol in a woman's body, how it operates differently in a man's body, how our testosterone is so much more less in our body than the man's, and how to reboot it. And it was just like, oh, this makes sense. This is not something frivolous and something I get to do when I've done all of my other things. Pleasure is an inaugural, it's like the needle mover in the woman's health. And when I heard that this is the needle mover in our health, and I started practicing it, and I started leading my way, like every time I ate, every time I cooked, rather than rushing, I started with little things. Like, instead of just like, oh, fuck, I've got to cook dinner for my son and I, like I do it every day, every week, every month. Like, how can I make this more pleasurable? And so everything I was doing, like, how do I make my shower more pleasurable? If I'm going to have friends over, how do I make that experience? I was like, oh, come over and have a cup of tea. It's like, no, create something that I want to lounge in. And my stress levels completely dropped. I was able to handle raising my child a lot more. When I walked out, I started to see things differently in the world, like Mother Nature, we come from her. It was so, and I've studied permaculture, and I've done so much in, like, organic farming, and suddenly being more pleasure filled, I went, oh, I can see the systems easier. So once my nervous system was being regulated the feminine way, because I am in a woman's body, as opposed to the, make sure you get your 8 hours sleep masculine way, it's like, oh, hang on a minute. things just changed so much for me, and my life started to change increment by increment. And yeah, then it was just an act of sovereignty to go, this, my whole life, my business, the way I operate in my friendships, the way I operate in parenting, had all came from that part. And as opposed to being frivolous, it's like, this is necessary. It's absolutely necessary for my well-being.
Yeah, I love the way that you said the pleasure, because I also believe that many people think that it's only something due to intimacy or sexuality, but it's so much more, that how you can really see yourself experiencing the things that you do on a daily basis with more pleasure, or what are those things that might seem small, like maybe just the breeze on your face, or when you're walking on the ocean and you feel the water touching your skin, or many things can be, I think, pleasurable. And I think when we talk about the business, also to see if that's the business step, it's something coming from pressure because you've been contained into this masculine hustle culture, or is it something that you really desire? And then for me, when I talk about the pleasure business, is like really to let your intuition guide you, and to be like, okay, is it the right direction for me? Is it something bring me more pleasure? Is it something, aligning with my long-term vision? Or am I trying to push through something that I know, or I thought, or I heard that I should be doing? So I think that's also something that many women that I work with, they are high achieving. So they receive this very deep subconscious programming around, like, you have to hustle, you have to reach these certain things. But I always believe that it needs to be also that we born as a feminine. So yes, of course, you have to have some kind of structure in your business in order to flow. Because without any structure, it can be like a fairy dream.
Yeah.
But also then you have to kind of feel into it, like, does it really align for me? Does it make my heart like pump, or like excited or passionate? Or is it something that I just think that because this last business coach told me that this is the way? In my journey also, I've been now an entrepreneur 7 years ago, and I had many kind of burnout, or I would say that choices where I try to follow what they should be followed. And then into this online coaching space, I think many ways that you can get burned. So I think that's also very, very important as a female entrepreneur, just to really always check back with yourself, like, does it really align with yourself? Does it bring you more pleasure? Or does it come from the lack, or the kind of like, oh, I learned or I heard that, I should be further ahead, and then you push through it with the masculine. So what is your experience with this kind of things?
Yeah, as I'm hearing you speak, I think it's really important for us to remind ourselves that our like those things around intuition, which took me a long time. One thing I want to say about intuition is often, well, I know for me, when people talked of intuition, when I was still learning about all of this stuff, I was expecting intuition to be this big thing, like you wouldn't be able to get up, like if something was correct, your whole body would explode, all of these things. And yet intuition is that little knock. It's that, oh, I should contact that person. All women say this, and also men have intuition as well. Yeah. I mean, especially raising a boy, where I was just witnessing this human grow. God, he knew so much that he would know when as a young boy, he would know when people are about to knock on the door. He knew when my dog died states away. All of these things, like men have it as well. And it's that little, we live in a culture that doesn't allow us to have the space or the rest or the time to listen. So we are bombarded to make sure that we are separated from the feminine parts, and even men from their feminine parts. So intuition is so exquisite. It's the little knock, it's the thoughts, it's the thing of like, I don't feel like going out tonight, or I don't feel like going into, you go into a restaurant, or you go to walk into somewhere, and there's just something that's like, it feels strange. And the more power that we gain is when we start listening to that. And I love that part when you talked about structure, because that's another thing too. It's like feminine-led business. It's like, oh my God, it's chaos because the feminine is chaos. But, you know, we had the polarity. The world is full of polarity. It's full of opposites. And, you know, running a feminine-led business doesn't mean you throw out structure. It just means that structure is the container that supports the feminine wildness inside. So having the structure, knowing that structures too always need to shift and change, but not allowing the structure to rule. That structure is the only thing that you're doing, and is like also bringing in what feels so good for us. And I think, you know, the next decade or the next 2 decades, our whole world is seeing it's seeing a huge shift in this sort of perception that we all need to produce. We have to produce. And I mean, it's fucking the planet. It's fucking families. It's fucking our health. And it's making the very few loads of money. So it's also, this is the revolution, is for people to really coming back to what are you here to do? Why the hell were you born? Like, what is it that you want to be doing? And even if you are in a job that it is this Monday to Friday, it is for someone else, what can you do in the evenings that's for you? Like as the creation, you know, how can you change the way that you're spending your downtime, like becoming really autonomous and really sovereign in how you spend your downtime, taking those classes, dancing that dance, going on those holidays, because it's like we never know what's going to be happening tomorrow or next week or next month. The structure is having that our life is not falling apart, but it's bringing more of the feminine in, and as a woman in her body, becoming really sovereign in your experience of your hormonal changes, which are not the same as a man. I mean, I've supported women who work for corporations and to start tracking their cycle, and where they don't go into work or they work from home. This is all before, you know, the pandemic. So it's all like, now, you know, it's easy to say, I want to work from home, but because we've proven that you can do it. But where they would start tracking all of the problems that come up, the things that they missed, you know, the things that they didn't do so well, like as they were coming up to the dark moon on their first day of their bleed, you know, how they're running late, how they, you know, weren't listening properly in meetings and things like that. So they would document all of these things and go to their boss and say, I'm costing you money when I come to work in my dark moon and when I'm bleeding. Like, it's counterproductive. I'm willing to, you know, I need these days off, or I want to work from home, where I don't have to be on buses, on public transport, all of this stuff. This is feminine-led business, like even in your work environment, saying, I'm bleeding today, I'm not doing that stuff. Even saying that stuff out loud. You know, we have so much shame about the fact that we menstruate, and the whole fucking nation, the whole world is here because women menstruate. You cannot birth a human, a CEO, and any president of anything has only come through the body of a woman because she menstruates. But we won't talk about it. So it's even claiming this. It's even like going, I'm on light duties today. And even going, like, I'm going to stay home. It's a Tuesday and Wednesday. I'm willing, but I'll be working on Saturday. All of these things that I can do, I don't need to be in the office for. I'll do them at home, or I can come into the office on Saturday. You've got these 2 days at home. Of course, you're willing to go into the office on Saturday. And the thing is, if you're at home, you get a lot more stuff done anyway because you're not on the bar. All of that stuff. That is also feminine-led business. How are you leading your ship, leading yourself in your life, and really claiming in your family? You're not to cook and be doing all of these things on your menstruation. Like, create soups, put it in the freezer, or have the other person who's also the parent of the children, have them cook though. You know, that is, have a roster. These days you're unavailable, you know. So
Yeah, and I think also that the pleasure itself, right? Like, the many women that I worked with, they are not really aware of any self-pleasure or any rituals, right? So for me, when I started this journey 7 years ago, the first time when I was initiated into tantric self-pleasure, then I was kind of like, wow, it's a whole new level of pleasure that I never experienced, and I never knew that it exists, because we also been told by, you know, media and other outlets that pornography and things like that, that how it's supposed to be, which is not female at all, right?
No,
So
no.
that's
Yeah.
not something we want to. And even though that you think that you are doing you know, great or okay sex or whatever your feeling about it, but then when you start learning how to breathe, how to connect with your body, how to activate your energy, you're just becoming this whole new, like, wow, there is so much out there that actually is like within you that you need to kind of activate. So for me, when my business really skyrocketed is when I started to tap into like a daily practice of tantric self pleasure, and to using even sex magic to manifest the business that I wanted. So that was really something. And those who are not aware, like, what is that, is basically learning to connect with your breath, sound, and movement in a way that you activating this sensual energy that you have when you are also with a partner, but you can tap into it for yourself, and then you can just visualize or imagine things that you would like to manifest in your life or bring into your life. So it's a beautiful thing to do, I think, for a female-led business as well, to support the days when things they are maybe not as flowy as you would wish to. I follow one American lady. She's also a sexologist, and I love the way that she describes it. Like, why would you have another coffee when you can have an orgasm?
I was just about to say that if you have orgasm breaks in the
I
office.
love that. I also should implement it more, I think. Because sometimes you know these things, but then also life can come into the mode of like getting into, and also just to, as you said, I think it's so important to have the structure, and even with the sensuality, to not to feel restricted if you want to put yourself into like, okay, this day I'm going to do just 10 minutes, maybe like sensual dance or self pleasure, or seeing like what pleasurable things you can bring. And maybe that's really just cooking something, like baking a chocolate cake or dipping your fingers into chocolate or something, but just really finding the things. And I think also for the business aspect, right? Like to find the things that what really vibrates you, what makes you feel alive, like in your business. Because I also had the experience within the 7 years that I might be some passionate about some things like 7 years ago, which right now they don't resonate me anymore. And then just to keep on going because they were working. So that's also a very masculine way to do it. But then instead, you can just ask yourself, does this really bringing me any pleasure, or I'm just doing it because of the sake of, you know, pressure or being like expected. So I think that's also very, very important. What is your practice that you fulfill the energy in your business?
Oh, so many. My thing is I have a beautiful espresso machine, so I'm always massaging my breasts when I'm making my coffee. You know, that's my thing. The way that I've set up my space, as in the erotic blueprints, I'm a shapeshifter, but I'm really, my sensual is really high. So everything is really lush. I've got so many plants, like they keep growing and keep growing because I, you know, sing to them and masturbate in front of them and all of those things. And when we, you know, when you're speaking about sex magic, it's like, you know, creating a vision board and masturbating in front of the vision board, or creating a beautiful altar that has all of the, you know, words or pictures of what you want to create into that. So you know, I've just started with this new year as well, and a practice once again, like especially for this full moon, was preparing before this full moon, and had just redid my whole altars, like recreated my altars, bringing everything up because I've got some big projects on this year. But it's also having pleasure breaks. You know, it's like it's so interesting because I follow a lot of a few fitness accounts, and you know, that thing is like, oh, you know, every hour, every 2 hours, put on your alarm so you can just do 10 push-ups or whatever. And I'm like, go and have an orgasm. First hour do push-ups, then have an orgasm. Third hour do push-ups, then have an orgasm. Because it also it clears the brain. I mean, science has proven it. So many people talk about it. It's like even when you're at the office, it's like if you're in front of the computer and you're trying to write some stuff out, things are not working. And this is also too, if we look at the energy of the universe, if like the person's not phoning you back, you can't get through, the website's not working. Oh my, no matter what you do, it just won't load. Like sitting in front of the computer, trying, like pressing enter again, it's like it's only creating more stress. Go away, go and rub one. In Australia, we say rub one out. Go and rub one out, go and have an orgasm. Like all of my clients, like, oh my God, if I get caught. I said, who's going to catch you in the bathroom? Like, it's so funny. That thing is like, if you think of your day in the office or your day at home, you're alone in the bathroom 99.9% of the time. The moment you say to someone, have an orgasm, oh, I might get caught. Since when?
But that's bringing, right, like all the subconscious belief that also imprinted as a child, or like as we grew up, like all that shame and all that guilt that we carry, right? Like there's so many aspects also that when you talk about with women, that you can have the pleasure-led business, but then they're like, yeah, but then I cannot attend to my husband or my child, or then I would just have to choose, or like I would feel guilty to doing that, or feeling more guilty maybe to being more successful than my husband, or so many beliefs, I think. So that's one of the other thing I wanted to mention, to have the mindset shifts or to work with someone. I'm also a hypnotherapist, and I think that's also very, very important to see and check in with yourself, like what beliefs that you're carrying, you know, from early age, and then the surrounding and all the places. When I was traveling more extensively and I first met all these crazy people, I would say, in Bali, with all the sex gurus and the tantrikas and all the people, I also noticed like, wow, I come from a very corporate, very masculine economics background. So my way of thinking was very structured, very much like, yeah, this is the way that how you make money, this is the way that you do things. And then I was like, no, actually there is another way, and there is a new perspective which is more pleasurable and more fun. And also for me, one of the reasons why I became an entrepreneur, for the freedom, right, which I think also as a female is very important, to be able to support yourself and to be free in your craft and in your creativity. And I think once you led also a pleasure-led business, then it's really causing you to be more creative and really unblocking that abundance as well around you, to kind of have like, maybe also we are connected and who knows what will happen. So there is many things can also happen, you know, in terms that you attract people easily, or you find collaborations, or you get invites, or you just suddenly have this download, or who knows. So I think that's why also is super important to be in touch with your femininity and to have clear all that mindset issues before.
I think it's, you know, and I can imagine that I have someone that I recommend my clients to for hypnosis, and I know how powerful it is. And it's just such incredible work when we're looking at what's holding us back, what's within us. And I use a lot of AE, accelerated evolution tools for that when we're looking at where stuff is held in the body. But I want to speak to what you mentioned around where women, the guilt that comes up, I won't be able to attend to my husband. Like, we have been so colonized that the feminine is to be of servitude to the world and put herself last. And that's also that thing of like, well, I couldn't do that. I wouldn't be able to find that time to do that. I couldn't take that day off because I'm about to bleed, because we are so conditioned that we do not have the ability to take sovereignty of our needs. You're not asking, this is what I say to my clients. I say, so we're not here asking permission to exist. We're not here to ask permission to be in the experience of our body. We're here to co-create with you so that I do what I need to do, you do what you need to do, and where do we cross the bridge? You know, I'm not asking permission to be, you know, in bed all day on my first day of my bleed, I mean, we know all of this, that men are unable to handle the pain, where we've been so gaslit around the pain, all of that stuff. And of course, but also this is another thing. It's like, take a pill. Do you know what is the most powerful way? And I have an incredible story about this, to release pain from your menstrual cycle? Clitoral orgasm. The
Orgasm. I knew that that's going to be the answer.
Pain is contract. So this is another way we've been colonized, another way that we're bullied. Don't touch yourself. Don't source from your own body. Oh, you're bleeding. We're going to tell you what's going to happen. And I have the most incredible story. I lived in Paraguay in 1990 when I was 17. I turned 18 there. So we are looking at 34 years ago. And 5 years ago, so 34 years ago, there was another girl from the United States that was also in my village in Paraguay as exchange students. I was there for a whole year. And so I've been here 5 years ago. So 5.5 years ago in Vancouver, she came to visit me. I was in Vancouver for 8 months. So she came down to visit me, and we were going past this place, and she wanted to get depositories. It's like CBD depository, because it was like available in Canada and not where she was. So, and I asked her, what are you getting those for? She goes, oh, my painful. She goes, do you remember when we lived in Paraguay? Like, she goes, nothing shifted. I have such painful periods. So take 5 years off from that. So like 29 years. Yeah. And I'm like, honey, have an orgasm. And she's like, what? I said, just as you feel, I said, even before you feel pain coming on, like as you start bleeding, like, and you don't need, prostrate gland or cervical orgasms. It's just the clitoral orgasm, because it releases all of the stress. It relaxes the uterus. One menstruation cycle it took. That next menstruation cycle that she had, she's just like, oh my God, I've had the best. She doesn't take any pain in. We're looking at 29 years. Of taking pills, taking medication. My menstruation is it's a problem. It's this. And that's another thing we're taught. So, this pleasure led means we have everything we need inside of us. And our orgasm is of service to the relationship. So if we're just having clitoral orgasms, and as you say, with porn is for the man's gaze. He gets to do what he wants. There's no boundaries and consent. There's no hours of setup. There's no asking what the woman needs. It's just telling her. And so women who are watching porn, this comes into your psyche that you're just of service once again to the masculine, to the man's orgasm. We're told that if we can't have an orgasm through penetration, there's something wrong with us. There's nothing wrong with the person doing the thing to us. There's something wrong with us because our body's not doing what they want. All of this stuff. So to be pleasure-led is being completely sovereign around our orgasm. And the service, as you say, with the manifestation, with the stress release, with the more that we come into our orgasmic selves, we then start to truly understand what our mission is, what we want. And when you're completely fucked wide open and you are leading your life through that, your whole family is happy. So as far as feeling guilty, it's like, your man, like if your partner's female, like your family will be so much more happy and so more alive when you're alive in your eroticism. We are erotic beings. Our turn on to life, if we're shutting that off, we're also sucking the life out of our family. We're sucking the life out of our relationship. We're existing. That's someone else's project. And none of us came here to do that. So it's our duty. It's our responsibility.
Yes. And what do you think about the menopause? Like
it's regenopause. Yes, if you want to talk about that, let's go.
Because that also I've been hearing different aspects, but also very similar in this way that also some sexologists believe that there is no menopause, or you can have a menopause, but like really get through it very easily, right?
Yeah.
And then what is, because you work also with hormones and hormonal balance and things like that. So that's just my personal interest.
Yeah. So what we need to truly understand, once again, that the woman's experience is hijacked. For centuries now, through religion, it's been hijacked. And then once the Industrial Revolution really came in and took over. Our whole experience has been hijacked. So the moment that a young menopause, and it's not menopause, no, I'm not putting men on pause. Like, this is also something that we need to understand. Our sexuality gets so much better once we stop bleeding. There's orgasms, there's types of orgasms, there's nerve endings that come alive for orgasmic pleasure in our cervix that do not come alive until we finish bleeding. They're not this type of orgasm is not available to us whilst we're menstruating. So number one, it's not menopause. We're not putting men on pause. It's regenopause. And it has been hijacked because we become so powerful. Like the way that I speak and the way that I show up since I stopped bleeding, night and day. Like now, truth is the only thing that matters. Like my boundaries, I don't have to learn to have boundaries. I don't bleed anymore. I have fucking boundaries. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's just like, boom, like it's so amazing. And we're so truthful and we're so powerful. So menopause has been designed to make sure that women don't get into the power. So we stay sick, and then we can have our uteruses removed. We can have all of these things so that we are so dismembered. The symptoms of menopause begin the first day that we bleed. So when a young girl at the age of 13 or 14 starts to bleed, the majority of girls, it's in shame, it's in fear, they're afraid, they don't tell their mothers, they're too embarrassed. They still have to go to school, they still have to do exams, they have to play sport, they have to do everything. And these horrendous memes that go around saying, I can do anything a man does, even when I'm bleeding. Like, what the fuck is that? Who gives a shit if you can? You're not meant to be. You're putting so much stress on your body, and you're creating an environment that is in contradiction to what's happening in your body. So when we have and I always say, and I know a lot of people can't, but I think a lot of people should, being on the land, free bleeding, being barefoot, grounding, connected to the land, drinking clean water, and not having chemicals in my food. That's another thing. It's like, I mean, there's so many issues with men as well because of the chemicals in the food. So we look at like menopause, this is something wrong with a woman's body. It's like there's something inherently wrong with the system that we're raised in. So anyone here listening who has daughters, they do not need to go to school when they're bleeding. And there's also too, if we think of the contraction of shame, like if we have a little bit of blood on our dress, we get teased, we get bullied, we're not allowed to talk about it. We're made to feel like we're filthy, we're dirty. And that's all in the myofascia. So that gets held in the myofascia. They talk about trauma, like car accidents, violence, how that gets held in the myofascia. Well, so does all of this conditioning. Who we are as women is held in our system. And that's all held in our womb. As you know, through Tantra, it's like the universe is inside of the feminine sexual anatomy. So our womb is the portal, and I know it sounds a little bit woo-woo, but it's also connected to our generations. I mean, our orgasm is of service to clear that. So this subject of menopause is not just this one thing. It's like, how have we've been made to ignore that we're bleeding. And then our birth has been fucking colonized as well, where women lay on their back to birth. We're not squatting. We're not, out in nature. We're not doing things. We're being told that we can't even birth properly. And, we're given all of these things, and it's so insane. So by the time we reach this stage where we're meant to be going through the purple tent, the ancient cultures is like, once a woman was in her purple tent, once she's in regenopause, now she holds counsel because she's a wise woman. Whilst you're raising children and whilst you're still bleeding and whilst you're in that whole mother and erotic stage, it's like to hold counsel, you're busy with other things. So once you walk into this incredible crone-ship, it's such an exquisite time. And this is so fucking powerful. And our systems know, the men know in charge, that you cannot have women in their power. So menopause has been, like, I think it was in Indonesia. I've traveled to so many incredible countries, and they don't even have a word. They don't have a word for postnatal depression, and they don't have a word for menopause. Like when I would start speaking about that, they're just like, huh?
What is that?
Why would women be depressed after they've given birth? There's all of these hormones that gush through. And also they would say, What is a woman doing with a baby that is 48 hours old or 1 week old out in public? They're going, why are you taking this? Do you mean, so there's all of those things of like when we're looking at, well, they have different structures. Yeah, they have very different structures that are centered around the matriarch, that are centered around the feminine experience. We have a culture of show and tell. You know, look at my baby's just born, I'm going to go out into the world straight away. And so we're putting so much stress on our systems. You know, it's like, look, I carried my baby, all of that stuff. And I'm not saying I didn't go inside. I wasn't inside for the first month, but I was very, very quiet. Because our body needs to heal. That's another thing. If you've given birth to 1 to 2 to 3 children and you haven't had this support system, you haven't been able to just nurture and breastfeed your baby. These are also things that lead to menopause, because this is the health of the womb, the health of the system, the health of our cycle coming back. So, yeah. And also too, it's like, a lot of the, you know, the symptoms of not being able to sleep well is a lot of that thing of not sleeping means because we're also, shit, I've got to get into the system of like, I've got work from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. So we're also looking at contradictions of like, I need to sleep. And I'm not saying like, oh, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter if you don't sleep. But what are we downloading when we're awake? If we can't sleep, if we were to commune with, you know, the goddess, with God, with spirit, with ourselves, like the visions, the downloads that we get. But that doesn't work in our culture so much unless it's on the weekend, unless, you know, because it's like the kids are going to get up, or we've got a meeting at 9 a.m. Or so it's also, you know, it's having compassion for ourselves in that we're entering this incredible stage that we would normally be sitting, listening, but we've got to get up and do. So it's also a contradiction. But yeah.
Thank you so much. I love that. I never heard this way to put it, this man on pause, but very powerful.
We get hungry and we want more sex. There's no way. This is a time, any woman who's walked through menopause, it's a great time to maybe bring up polyamory to your partner and going, well, I'm really active. I have all this sexual energy and you're just not. Well, I don't know. And it's not like that, like heavens above, I don't ever like say to my clients you need to be polyamorous. That's a whole nother subject. I think anyone doing polyamory right now in our culture that doesn't have a sharing culture, I say all power to you. Anyone raising kids, I think it's amazing. I think it's astounding. It takes a lot of guts, and it's not for everyone, and it is a really big journey, but there is that thing of like we're so sexually alive. I mean, oh my God. I mean, my 50s, it's the best decade yet. I keep being told that 60 is going to be better. It's all of my wild older female friends, they're so sexually active. They're more active than my 20-year-old friends.
Amazing. So if you would have to say one last thing to sum it up, the female-led business, what you would say that what the people can take away as like the one-liner, like the juice.
The one-liner. Your pleasure is your responsibility. It's your responsibility. That's all it is. It's not an add-on. Your pleasure is your responsibility.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would like to say that the pleasure is really something to fuel you, and don't do it if it's pressure. Then just ask yourself, does it really bring me pleasure or pressure? And if the answer is pressure, then really go and have an orgasm.
Go and have an orgasm and come back and decide then.
I think the one-liner, have more orgasm and everything will be
That's
better.
Right. The world needs you to do it. Everyone.
Thank you so much. And we will, if somebody would like to work with you or reach out for you, where is the best they can do that?
You can my website is melissalouise.world, because I go all over the world. You can remember that way, and through there there's a contact down there. Otherwise I can give you my link for Instagram, which I'm rebuilding, because we know we get punished for being in this world. So I'm building a yummy little Instagram account again, and my Substack is actually a really great way, because I know I'm not for everyone. I'm really upfront. I'm really, things like that. I'm not harsh. I'm very yummy. But I always say, like, get on my Substack and you can get a feel for my writing and a feel for how I work, and lean in that way as well. So I'll give you those.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So I will just add everything up in the description, and then we can lead on for more pleasure. Thank you so much. And
Thank
if you
you.
have any questions, guys, you can leave it in the comments and we will take it from there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, darling.
Have a lovely evening.
You have been inside of the Pleasure Studio, where all things intimate are up for discussion. Thanks for getting real with me today, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. If this conversation sparks something within you, do not hesitate to share it by emailing me via the link below. If you're not already, you can follow my good tush on the social media handles also below, and make sure to hit subscribe. Tune in next time for more truths about pleasure and passion. Until then, stay bold, courageous, and truthful as you explore your pleasure your way.